Hey everyone, it's Doug with Inspire Light Shows. I've had a few people ask me to go over some of the changes I've made in my display since last year when I did a thorough walkthrough video. So I thought I'd take a moment here to go through a few of the items that have changed in the display since the last time and talk about them in a little bit of detail. So one of the first things that you might notice if you've seen the videos already are these Winterberry trees that are added here. I have 6 of them in the display. Uh, 4 kind of in this corner and 2 kind of behind over in here. There's actually supposed to be 5 more. I should have 11 in the display, and there would be 5 of them kind of back out up against the fence in that little area there, kind of scattered throughout there. So hopefully next year I'll get those done. Those that know me have kind of know the running joke is I've actually had these Winterberry trees for 3 years, and this is the first year they've made it in the display. So 3 years of it not being in there, mainly because they just take a ton of work to convert over to pixels. So I'll talk about that here. Is what's going on is these are just store-bought trees. These are the GE brand Winterberry trees. You can see these a lot at Home Depot. I actually got these from Menards and had them shipped to me since my Home Depots here did not have any. They never have them in stock by the time you try and get them in clearance. So I was able to score these from Menards. And the general construction is you have just a little stand, a cheap stand that it sits in, and then some thin steel tube that runs up. And this particular version has a joint here where this little flimsy, and I mean flimsy little kind of top section, top third of it sticks in. And so I had to reinforce that because that was not going to withstand the winds we get here. So the way I did that, come around this backside and get a good look, is I just zip tied in this fiberglass pole, and these are the kind of, I don't know what you call them. They're the fluorescent little poles, 3-4 feet tall, that they sell at Home Depot and Lowe's for marking your driveway so you don't hit it with a snow blower or ATV if you have a lot of snow and you're using an ATV to clear your driveway. So that's what these were for, those little marking flags. Just painted it white, zip tied it in, and have it running down here foot and a half, and that keeps this top section sturdy for all the wind. So that works out really well. As far as the pixel layout on this, so the first thing is I strip all the original lights off. It's just easier to cut them off with wire cutters and not worry about trying to save those lights. And then you go into the process of putting the pixels on. And these are custom strings I had made. And the way these work is I start, my starting point is kind of over here, but you start on a branch and I have 1 pixel, and say I have, off the top of my head, say it's like 3-inch spacing or 4-inch spacing, then 4-inch spacing, then 4-inch spacing, and then I have a little larger gap here to help me bridge this, and I put 1 in the middle. So there's a repeating pattern of spacing I did on this. So these are not equal length spacing on these strings, and a little challenging for the manufacturer to do that, and I think they at first told me no with what I was trying to do, but after talking to them they were able to do this for this kind of alternating pattern for the length, and that just allows me to get the spacing the way I wanted to on here. Another thing with that is the way I figured it was just taking an old string of pixels and kind of wrapping it through and measuring how much wire spacing I was doing throughout that. So in this case, I have these 2 sections. The first 2 branch levels are 1 set of spacing, and then the next, I think, 4 sections are a different spacing, and then the top is a 3rd spacing interval. So I have that on those, and the way I have this set up is by strategically having them placed in the same order. So these lower ones, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 1 in between. And then I come up to the next level, and I have 1, 2, 3, and 1 in between. And then coming up here, you just see 1, 2, 3, and then a direct jump over there. So that's kind of the interval I did. And What this allows me to do, and I probably will never do this, but I have the opportunity to do it if I want to get crazy in X-Lights, is I can model this out each branch this way, because all the trees are the same as how they're wired, so I can literally go branch to branch and do some cool stuff in X-Lights. Probably won't ever do that because these things just look so good on their own. And honestly, if you just lay the pixels in here and don't even worry about zip tying them and putting them on each branch, they're going to look probably 80-90% as good as this one is, because I actually have one of the trees on the other side of my driveway that I didn't have time to actually finish that out this year and do it this way, so they are just loose in there, and I can notice it. I guarantee you no one else in this who has ever seen this show would notice that that tree is done differently. So if you're a perfectionist, you can go this route. If you don't really care and you just want them to look good, and they will look very good, you can just literally lay your pixels in here. This tall one is 6 feet tall of the Winterberry tree, and I think it's 216 pixels, 216 or 214, something like that is in that one. And I have a small one over here, and all this is I just took the bottom section off to give a different height, so I'm just not using that first section of 2 branches, and I think this is 160 pixels on that one. So that works well to give myself a little bit of different sizes, which looks cool in the display. Going back over here, just the one last thing I'll mention on them as far as securing them and how do I have these things mounted so that they can withstand the insane winds we get here. And first thing is I have rebar, so I have 1/2-inch rebar that goes into the ground, and I happen to use a 4-foot piece on this because I was trying to see if I could get away with just doing rebar. So 4-foot piece, and I have 2 feet in the ground, 2 feet up into the tree, and it's sturdy. And if I had 30-mile-an-hour winds, I'd probably get away with just that. But I don't. I get 70, 80 easily each season, and we did get some close to 80-mile-an-hour winds here a few weeks ago. And so to be able to compensate with all that extra wind, I have to use guy wires. And a big fan of guy wires, so I ran 2 on here, and this is just thin 16th-inch steel cable. I just looped it around here, crimped the ferrule on there, and then just came down here. I'm just probably 2 feet from the base and just have a small rebar. I think that's only a 1-foot piece of rebar in there. So what I would say to that is my 4-foot piece of rebar I have is not necessary because I had to compensate with the other one, so I think even just a standard 2-foot piece of rebar is probably adequate, or 3-foot for sure would work, and you wouldn't have to go with the full 4-footer if you're using other guy wires to secure it. And this thing, even with 2, and I have it kind of positioned to compensate for the primary wind direction, but yeah, it'll rock a little bit back and forth, and this is the opposite direction the guy wires are in, but yeah, it's not going anywhere, so that's solid. So very good setup with that, and that's worked out well on all the Winterberry trees and very easy to put in place that way. The next thing to talk about here is the projector. So a lot of people have asked me about the projector that I'm using, and this projects onto my garage door, which is, if you kind of take a step back here, there's the projector, there's the door. It's maybe 12, call it 12 feet back from the door, and the door is a light color, so I thought that would work out. And this was just a last minute addition. I was not going to put a projector in the display. I kind of had been thinking about it for years, but I think it was actually after Halloween I decided, you know what, I'm going to put a projector in. So I had to figure this out, build the enclosure, figure out how the virtual matrix worked on it, and actually end up learning some projection mapping as well. And I'll talk about that here. So the way I have this set up is on a stand, and I just built this thing very hastily. So I have a little 2x4 frame. It just sits on the ground there, and I have some heavy-duty sandbags at just 60 pounds each. Got 3 of them that are holding it down. And then I have the platform that it sits on that I painted black, kind of blends in, and this little hinged base that allows me to adjust the exact angle So it's hinged on the front, and I have 2 bolts on the back, one on either side, with just a compression spring on there that I can adjust the kind of tilt on that with those wing nuts. And I have the thing, as you see, locked down because I don't want someone running off with this projector. Inside, we got the projector here is an Optoma 3800 lumen projector, and it puts out quite a lot of heat. So I have 4 fans. I have 3 on this side and 1 right there on that close side to the camera, and they are controlled by this thermostat here. So whenever the temperature reaches, I think it's like 70 degrees in here, from that little temperature probe, the fans kick on, and 2 of them are bringing in cold air, and those 2 right there that are closest to the exhaust on the projector are exhausting the hot air out. Raspberry Pi in there that controls it. So I'm just HDMI out of the Pi, and that goes into the projector. And I also have USB on it that goes out into the serial port of the projector, and that's through the plug-in on the Falcon Pi player. Allows me to actually remotely turn the projector on and off. So right now the projector's off, or in standby mode, and I have like 5 minutes before showtime. Command goes through, I run a script on the Pi, and that turns the projector on, and that allows the Pi to then output on it. The one issue I had with my projector, and I know not everyone runs into this problem, is even though there's a setting on the Pi player to force the HDMI signal out, that only works if the projector is already running when the Pi is booted up, in my case. So what would happen is I turn the projector on 5 minutes before the show, and it just sits here and flashes like a blue screen, and then it goes to like a spinning circle as it's looking for the input signal, and it just wasn't registering that there was the input signal. So what I did is at 5 minutes, like I said, the projector, or the Pi, turns the projector on, and then a minute later I run a command to reboot the Pi. So 4 minutes before showtime, the Pi reboots, and then when it comes back online, it already sees the projector running, and then it has no problem inputting a blank signal to the out of the HDMI, so then I don't have issues with the projector flashing either the blue screen or searching for an HDMI signal. So that's what I have running on there. And so that works out well. And that's pretty much it. Do have a power strip in there as well. Didn't mention that, so I just ran a power strip there, AC for the projector, and then the 2 power supplies, one for the Pi and one for the fans. So that's that guy. The other thing new, if we come over here, is going to be the fireworks. So I've wanted to add these fireworks for a year or 2, and I finally got around to it. They're really cool. So it gives another vertical element. So I have 2 of them over here. It's basically like an oversized trellis, and I tried to see if they sold something like this ready to go at like Home Depot or Lowe's, and they didn't, so I had to make this. And I found this material at Lowe's actually had the better material for what I wanted to do, and this is the wood frame, and this is just redwood, and I don't know exactly what they called it. It looks like it's about inch and a quarter, inch and a half wide, and half inch here, and so it's just redwood sticks. Each a 10-foot stick was, I think, like $8.50. It was under $9. I remember that. So relatively inexpensive, and so I got 4. Those are 4 full-length sticks, and just a 5th one that is used for the horizontal bracing in a couple places at the bottom that you can't really see there, and then one about a third of the way up, and another one that final third, and that's just what holds it together. And then to put the lights on it, I designed this 3D printed mount, and this just kind of snaps around it, and then I do have one screw here, so it takes a little half-inch a long number 6 machine screw that just screws in there, that locks it in place, and the lights just friction fit. And there's a little channel under here that allows the wire to recess, so you can just neatly tuck and fold the wire in there, so it's a really clean look. And this works great. These things friction fit, they will not come out. They're solid. So it's a really cool setup. If there's some interest in this, I might add it to the store. So we'll see. Be on the lookout for that potentially on the website later this year, that you have a system that would work with the redwood available from Lowe's. And if I do that, I'll try and link the actual SKU number from Lowe's for the wood that was utilized. Now to mount this, I just zip tied it to the fence here and a couple places down at the bottom. And I wanted to see if that would be enough. And I had it out here one day and we had about 35, maybe 40 mile an hour winds, and it was moving too much. And I kind of figured it would need additional support. So then I went in and I put these little eye bolts in here, and again 16th inch steel cable, making some guy wires, and just one on either side on each end. So 4 total guy wires, and this thing isn't going anywhere even in the strongest winds. So those are the fireworks. Very cool. Really like the look of them, and awesome prop. So that's a great idea, and there's not a lot of pixels in them. Each one is just 50 pixels, so each section. So 200 pixels total off one output. I did distribute the power down here, so I'm actually splitting the power at the beginning, then towards the end. If you notice here, this is funny. I do a repair. I'm having horrendous issues with rabbits this year. They've probably chewed 25 to 30 wires, and this is one of them they chewed in half. So I had to use the Scotch lock to temporarily put that back together. Oh, and look at this. This is new, so they even chewed that one since I did this. That pisses me off because that's one of my long extensions. But yeah, the rabbits are just insane. I'm sure when I get time to start taking the display down here in the next week or so, I bet I'm going to run it across just a ton more wires that they've chewed through, just not all the way to destroy or cause it to stop working. Another subtle change I made is with these snowflakes. Previously I had the 24-inch chroma flakes from Biscoyo, and I upgraded them to the 24-inch snowflakes from Gilbert Engineering, which have about 2 to 3 times the density depending on the specific flake. I believe the 2 I'm using here are a flake B and a flake K, but they have many different styles with different submodels in them, and you can do some really cool stuff in X-Lights. So if you're looking to upgrade your snowflakes, I highly recommend those. The last thing I'll talk about here is the Runway. Now, I've had the Runway in previous years, but this is the first year I've been really happy with how it turned out. And so the changes I made to it was taking the lights that were previously individually staked and moving everything to a rail system. That way it's all modular, and I can just interchange all the pieces. If something breaks, I can just take a section out and bring it in for repair rather than having to do a field repair. And that's been very handy this year with the rabbits chewing all my wires, is I've been able to take sections in and repair when necessary. But you can see this thing really does look like a Runway. It's straight as can be, and this is very accurate. I'll try and get some video of this at night so you can see how this looks, but this is an ALSF2 approach light system leading to the Runway with touchdown zone lights, and very cool. And the way I have these set up, and these are a variation of the Pixable mounts that I have in the store. And the Pixable mounts, if you're not familiar, is a very good way to mount your Pixel bulbs or Brilliant bulbs onto either PVC or EMT. And you can see the mounts themselves have these flat sides on them, and that allows you to get put them on a flat surface like a table, and even though you have a round tube, you can then get everything lined up straight, and then there's a small hole in the bottom where you can put a small screw in there and screw through the PVC or the EMT and lock them in place. Now obviously you see these have square sides. I'm using aluminum channel. That's just what I had bought years ago when I had planned to do this setup on the Runway, and I just never got around to doing it. So that's why I did the aluminum channel. It's just what I had. But this setup with the Pixable mounts are designed for either EMT or PVC, and they are available on the website. A very cool thing if you're looking to mount these props or mount the pixel bulbs or brilliant bulbs and get them perfectly aligned, because you can get results like this even if you're using a round tube like PVC. So that's it. That's really all the changes to the display for this year. And I have a lot of things planned for next season, so we'll see how much of that actually gets implemented. But some really cool stuff coming for the 2021 season, and we'll see you then. So have a good one.